All right, guys. Today we are going to talk about the difference between marketing a product versus marketing a service.
And
So,
there is a big
Brian,
difference. Yeah. Well, I think a product, right? A product is something you want to see people use, right? So that's the biggest thing. You want to see people using it. You want to know how it works. You want to know how it feels, how it looks, you know. Whereas a service, the biggest difference is you're dealing with the company, you're dealing with the brand, you're dealing with the culture. And when you buy a service, it's like, what is the brand and the culture of that company? Because, for instance, if you need to contact them, right, you're having a problem, the last thing is you want to deal with some sort of, gruff, customer service rep, right? You want a company culture where it's inviting, where if you call them, it's not going to be an issue. So
yeah.
I
So
think that's the biggest difference.
let's take a look at two companies, right? Let's compare a product to a service, and two companies that do this really well.
Hmm.
Let's look at, let's say, Nike
Right. Okay.
versus Geico, right?
Hmm.
Because Nike has physical products. Geico is more of a service provider, right? They're
Yeah.
insurance, so service. And these two companies have been known to have some really great marketing efforts. So
Yeah.
let's look at their strategies and compare them.
Well, I mean, what's interesting about Nike, right? It's a brand. So they're selling physical product. They're selling, that brand is selling a physical product, right? They're selling sneakers or clothing or whatever the case is. And it's interesting too, because a lot of what they do is sponsor athletes, or they have professional athletes, or even common athletes. And I don't mean that they're common, but they may have like high school athletes, or do you know what I mean? Things like that, like or people who are just into running. And it's about the athlete or the user of their product, right? Is really how they focus their marketing.
So another thing Nike does, and I think this is going to be the same, we're going to see some similarities between Nike and Geico, I think,
Mm-hmm.
because if you look at Nike, they have, their branding, and I think, any company, whether you be product or service, should really just, nail down what your branding
Yeah.
looks like and things like that. But they've got the swoosh, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've got,
Yeah.
like, that is the icon of Nike.
Or just do it,
Or
the
or they
slogan.
have a slogan or a tagline or whatever it may be. And we'll see that. I think we'll see that again with Geico.
Mm-hmm.
But so they do some of the basic things that
Mm-hmm.
companies should be doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then they kind of go a little bit further, and
Mm-hmm.
I think they tell stories. Like, I think that's really what a big part of their marketing effort is.
Absolutely. And I think their story is about the individual, the struggle. Do you know what I mean? Like, meaning like it's hard to go out and get motivated to run, maybe, or it's hard. It's about the passion of the athlete. And I think many times the story, that's where people connect, I think, the most with Nike's marketing. It's the passion of the athlete, because, you're becoming a professional whatever player. Think about all the hours, all the sweat, all the blood, all the broken bones you've put in as an athlete, or all the, the miles. Like, I mean, I know with me, with my Nike running app, one of the coolest things is I look at it and it's like, wow, I've ran whatever, 600 miles in this pair of shoes. It's sort of crazy when you think about that, right? That you think you spent all this time in this app, in the shoes, and I'm connected to that. And it's helping me track my progress. It's the motivation and the story to push athletes.
Well, I think to that point, you brought up the app. And I think that's another thing Nike does really well as part of their strategy, is they come up, like, they try to stay on the forefront of whatever it is, technology, whether it be an app, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're talking about, like, what's the next thing? Or even internally, they've done some things internally where they've, implemented some innovative processes, whether it be, I don't know what they had, something with the front of the shoe and automated shoe forming. I don't
Well,
remember.
yeah, I think they were also, and I could be wrong, but I think they were really one of the first people to put the sensor in the shoe to connect to the app. Like, I know for me, at least, that was the first pair of running shoes I had that connected my shoe to, my mobile device. I mean, I never had like one of the watches or anything, but, to my phone or whatever the case is, and they connect all that together. And what's interesting too, speaking about the app, like in the running app, they provide motivational running coaches, which is actually really like, because like anything, I mean, running is not my first sport, jiu-jitsu is, right? But every once in a while I go into these phases where I'm running, and what's interesting is like when I first got back into it, I'd stopped for like 3 months and I first got back into it. The first thing I did is when I opened that app, I actually used the motivational coach. Okay, this is your first run in a while. And it was actually just good to mentally get me through what I needed to do. And it probably prompted me to run further, right, than I would have run if I was probably just listening to music or in my own head or whatever the case is. So it was the story there, it was the story of motivation, but they were telling a story even in those running, even through their coaches, to push people.
And when you look at their ads, I mean, that's really what they're going for, is to evoke some sort of emotion. This is a very motivational message they have, and that's what they try to portray in their ads. Another thing I think Nike does really well is stay social. And
Absolutely.
not only do they stay social, but they're actually engaging. They're engaging with people, even though it's a big company.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because like they, I'm just gonna use go back to the running app, right? If you look at the running app, they're like, even in the running app, they're like, oh, share your run. #X. Do you know what I mean? So they're keeping you in that community, even though running is a very solo sport, in many ways. I mean, there's a lot of people that run with each other, but a lot of people run alone. So, but they're creating a community around it. I agree. It's at the end of the day, it makes things much more communal for people, and connected.
Mm-hmm. And another thing that they do that I think a lot of brands are doing now is talking about, being socially conscious and, trying to be involved in the community, a lot of community outreach. So, and that's something that they're vocal about. So, I think that if we had to kind of sum up what Nike's doing, we would say that they're, they're doing the things that traditional companies are doing, whether you're a product or service. But we look at it, their branding is intact. They've got a big social presence, storytelling. They are involved in the community. I think the one differentiator is really like the sponsorship, because that's something different that they can do. And you talked about product, right? You want to see people wearing their product. Like I'm sure there's a lot of social of people wearing their product. So I think that's one key differentiator for product companies.
Well, and even too, like, I think one of the things with product-based companies, like think about, you see that check mark, you know exactly what it is, right? You see Just Do It, it's Nike. That brand, right? You talked about strong branding. And I think one of the things that product companies have to do really well, that logo has to be recognizable, right? They need to make sure like if you see someone, they're posting whatever, a picture of them working out on Instagram, if there's that Nike check on their shirt or whatever the case is, okay, that person is using Nike gear. And I think that becomes really, really important into a branding strategy, because then you have other people telling your story. Right? You have other people that are then going and telling the story of their fitness or their weight loss or whatever it is, or their accomplishment. Like I just hit, 170,000 miles of running, and they're posting their picture with that Nike logo on it. The users are helping you tell your story, and obviously you inspired them because they bought something Nike or your product's good, right? So, there's a reason why, they're using your product too.
Now let's look at a company like Geico, who is selling a service. And I think we're going to see some similarities, but we're going to see them take a different approach, right?
Yeah.
So when you think of Geico, what do you think of?
I think of the little Geico guy, the gecko.
Gecko. I have two, if you'd like. I have two. Yeah. They're not green, but.
There you go.
So
do they talk to you? Actually, I guess is the
they
question.
don't.
No.
They don't. I kind of don't like them, but that's.
Do they have Australian accents or whatever? Is he Australian? I don't even know. I think he is.
I think so. But they have, so just as Nike has the swoosh, right? Geico has the gecko. I mean, Geico has other characters we know and love, right?
Yeah.
But when I think of Geico, I think of the gecko. One thing that Geico does, so Nike goes with emotion and inspiration, and Geico goes with humor. That's kind of their strategy.
I mean, Nike's not really going to show someone running and slipping on a banana peel.
Oh my God, that would be great.
It's not gonna be like Fail Army, right? But where Geico
fell down while wearing Nike sneakers.
Right, and I think, pretty much every insurance service group, it's humor, right?
Yeah.
But why is that? Sort of what we started talking about at the beginning. look, everyone gets into car accidents or whatever the case is. The last thing you want to deal with is calling and not having a pleasant person to deal with, on the other end. So I think that's why many insurance companies go with that humor, because you want to be able to connect with them. You want to know their culture is, oh man, crap, stuff happens, right? Like things happen and it's okay. And I think you want a culture like that in your car insurance, or any insurance really.
They also have a tagline, right? 15 minutes could save you 15% or more in car insurance. I could be commercial, but they also have a tagline. So we're seeing again another similarity. So product versus service. I think what they're doing is challenging, and I think this is something important for companies, is like to challenge people to think a different way about this service. Like you said, like, you're adding humor to it to make light of that kind of really shitty situation, right? So that's something that I think is important for service companies in certain industries.
I think a good example, it's not Geico, but Farmers, where they show every type of bizarro accident that's ever been a claim, right? It's like, oh my gosh, did that really happen? And it's like these, so they're just showing like anything could happen. It almost doesn't, it's, we got your back, right? And that's the message you really want. Someone has your back, it's like a good friend, right? It's like a good friend, we got your back, and we're not going to be mean if you F up, so.
Well, so you know what, actually, I was thinking about the difference here between like Nike and the way they sell product and now selling the service, right? Let's go back to that tagline, 15%. So really what they're touting is the benefit. Like they want to talk about the cost effectiveness, and that's what they're putting into their marketing strategy. However, whatever format it is, on whatever channel it is, they really want to get across, that they are a cost effective option. Where you don't see that. I don't really see that with product. Like, you don't want to, do you really want to say, oh, my product's so cheap? Like,
I think the difference is this, right? If you're targeting an athlete, because I think some products do, it's about cost effectiveness, right? But I think when you're targeting certain, demographics, like you're targeting athletes, it's about performance. The cost is irrelevant, right? You put in, it's like anything else. You put in, whatever, 10,000 hours worth of work to get to this point in your athletic career. You're not going to go, oh, you know what, man, these Nike shoes are $15 more than, this other brand. You're not going to do that. If it's the best thing for you and your performance, you're pretty much really going to spend the extra $15 and get the performance. I think most serious athletes are like that. I think the casual athlete, you know what I mean? It may go, yeah, I'm just gonna buy the cheaper running shoes because I don't go running all that much. But I think the serious athlete, the one that's motivated, is going to buy the stuff that is giving them the best performance out there. So
I want to point out that even though Geico is telling these humorous, little stories, they're still stories, right? I mean, so I think that is the recurring theme here for these two B-Myth companies that are marketing awesomely, storytelling aspect.
Well, here's the thing. What keeps you interested, right? What keeps you interested? It's the story behind it. It's, no matter what it is, whether it is a quick little 15-second story, you know what I mean? Or it's the story of someone's passion or achieving their goal. It's the story, and that's what you get involved in. I know we talk about this all the time, and especially with social media, it always amazes me how interested people are in like 15-second slices of someone else's life or some other event. It just amazes me how we'll sit there and watch, and TikTok is like a prime example of that. It's a minute, you know what I mean? And how interested we are in like just that little slice of someone's life or what they're doing. And I think, commercials work the same way. We if you tell the story right, people will be very interested in that tiny slice of what you're trying to tell.
Another thing both of these companies do, I think, and I just happen to see a lot more of it in Geico because I'm watching television or whatever I'm doing. They produce a lot of content, right? I think that's really important. I mean, and they send me emails all the time because I have Geico, but and I'm not promoting Geico in any way. I don't even like them that much, but I
used to have them and they still send me a lot of stuff. So it's all.
But I mean, there's a lot of commercials and different variety of commercials, right? We talked about all those different types, but they're always doing more. That's important.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? Probably in that industry, I don't know this for sure, but I'm assuming people switch car insurances
Mhm.
like once every pick a number, 5 years. They say like people move every X amount of years. I'm sure people switch car insurance like every so many years. So they know if they're not staying in front of people, I think with car insurance, that when they move, out of sight, out of mind, you're going to go with the stuff you're seeing or the people that are connecting to you or keeping in touch. I mean, Geico, I remember used to send, and I don't know if they still do, they used to send newsletters where it was just like, hey, here's some winter tips for driving in the Northeast, or, here's what happens with, if you get a flat or things like that. So that type of content too also becomes really important to users, not just the, hey, it's a funny commercial.
You can go to the store and shop for insurance, right? So
Right.
that product isn't always going to be in front of your face. And yes, we have our phones and we can see things, immediately, but it's not like shopping, where you're like, oh, you don't even know. Sometimes, I'm sure there are a lot of customers who pick up Nike products. They don't even buy it because it's Nike. It's kind of in front of them and it's what they need,
Right.
and so it's
Yeah.
not really the same thing. So you really, to your point, have to stay in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, that brings up an interesting point, actually. Because I am a Nike fan with running shoes. I have to say, those are the shoes that fit me the best, right? They work well for me. What's interesting about that is, like, back in the day, I would probably, I've never ordered shoes online, but the fact that I know, like, for the last few years, I've been ordering like my running shoes online because the fact that I know when I buy a Nike in a size, I'm size 10 and a half in Nike. When I buy a size Nike 10 and a half, the 10 and a half always fits me, and I think that's one of the important things. Like, it's consistent, like the product is consistent in its sizing. So I can go and buy it online. I mean, I think that actually becomes really important too with the consistency of products when you're purchasing online.
Again, we talked about these big companies, but what about the smaller companies? Now, how do you apply this strategy to a company that does not have the massive budgets of Nike and Geico?
Hmm.
I think you can still take away the key characteristics of the strategy and apply them to your company, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, if you're selling products, especially to, if you're selling sports products, I mean, look, the model's there, right? Sponsor athletes, and sometimes, I mean, that's give away free stuff, right? Sometimes you could do it in terms of an exchange. You don't necessarily have to pay athletes, right? Or, get at, professional, semi-professional athletes that you could sponsor. I think the message is still the same, right? It's about the performance, but I think in other products, it works the same way. You just need to figure out what that audience is and why that audience would use your product and basically target that audience to use the product. And then once they start sharing and people see it, you're going to see that. But it's the same tactic. Find the people that are passionate about whatever the product is used for or the product itself and focus on them. I think that becomes a big thing in any product you're trying to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter what it is. It really doesn't.
Yeah. And I think the consistency of the content is create a lot of content, be consistent, just like these brands are. So even though you don't have a big budget, it doesn't mean that you can't, you can't produce, well, I mean, you can't outsource a lot of content, but you can produce a lot of social or, whatever you can do a lot of it.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think you need to use tactics that are at hand. So if you are a product, you produce a product, it's to get, say to an influencer, hey, I'm going to give you product and in exchange do this, I think you could really work with influencers that way because many influencers out there. And I think we have a video on influencer marketing with product and we'll put a link into this for everyone. But there's a lot of ways you could do it with virtually no budget. You may be giving product away, which there's cost associated with it, but there's a lot of ways you could connect with influencers by just giving product away that you already have in stock.
Mm-hmm. And I think we talked about storytelling a lot. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that, you can apply as you're creating that content, be present on all those channels, just like they are,
Right. Yeah.
what else can we take away? I mean, that doesn't cost you anything to create an account and to just be there, and be in front of people and tell the story, define your brand.
Consistently.
Yes, consistently. So that, yes, you might have to scale, but I think a really important thing that these companies do, and I read this once about Geico, they test a lot of things. I think all good companies really test out things because you find out what works and then you measure. And if you don't have a big budget, you want to know what works, right? You don't want to just do a million things. You want to find out what's working. So I think that's an important part.
Yeah, and here's the thing too. I think about testing, what people have to realize. Sometimes you may have multiple product lines, right? And especially in services too, you may have different levels of product. And there are certain things that are going to work for certain audiences and certain things that are not. And you can take that in the product aspect too. There are certain things that work for the casual athlete and certain things that work for people who are aspiring to be professional athletes, right? So there are certain, that's why you see different levels of, let's say, running shoe, right? Produced by Nike. You have really high end ones and you have, common, more common ones, right? Or I don't know how they define their lines, but you have less expensive ones, right? So there's going to be people throughout that whole range, and it's no different. If you're talking about refrigerators, it's the same thing. You're going to have people who are buying just standard refrigerators.
People who don't want to really cool their food, and you're going to have.
Well, yeah. I'm hoping everyone wants to cool their food, but some of them are just going to have 2 doors on them. One for the fridge, one for the freezer, and other ones are going to have ice makers. Other ones are going to have LCD TVs in and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and things like that. And then some won't. I mean, some people are going to want that. So you need to target your message for the audience that you're trying to sell certain particular products to sometimes too, not just, hey, it's one message for everyone, and we talked about that. Nike does, sometimes target average athletes. It's about the individual, but then sometimes they're targeting like, here's a professional athlete, we talk about, Air Jordans, right? I mean, think about that. It's a whole line developed again around an individual. For how many years? I mean, those were out when I was in grade school. I mean, those things have been around for a long time.
So, I wanted to point out this branding thing before we wrap up, right? So I was thinking about this as we're talking. Geico has the gecko, Nike has the swoosh, and we have the lion.
We got,
it's just really cool, right? I mean, we've got this lion, and one day everybody's going to see the lion, and they're going to know that it's Insomnicat. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, put that lion on this screen right now, right there.
So that's it. That's I think and if you have any questions about marketing on a budget and marketing like Nike and Geico on a budget, feel free to reach out and we can help you.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. There are so many things. Or if you just have a simple question, hey, post it in the comments. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to answer you. And make sure you subscribe to whatever channel you are on.